Deputy Speaker, I move that this House condemns the Minister for Energy for mismanaging our electricity system, including that he is unable to satisfy Western Australian families, businesses and others. They will not again suffer through blackouts and reliability failures during the coming Christmas and summer period. Now, during the last sitting of Parliament, we outlined the case which went through and condemned the Minister for Energy for his failure to reverse the growing problems within Western Australia's electricity system. Now, in that debate, I set out 7 problem areas that the Minister had not addressed properly. And those seven problem areas were as follows: failing to make any notable progress to reverse the declining reliability of electricity supply, especially in rural and metropolitan semi-rural areas; failing to respond in a tangible manner to the Christmas outages review recommendations for improving grid reliability in rural areas; failing to resolve the problems around timely repair of electricity outages due to bushfire rules enacted by DFES; failing to ensure Goldfields Power is maintained by use of the available Kalgoorlie backup power generators; failing to publicly release Labor's plan for the future of our energy system without the insurance of our coal-powered generators being available; failing to ensure Premier Coal had met its contractual commitments to maintain coal supply for our coal-fired power plants; and denying rural and regional communities the benefit of modern life by sudden imposition earlier this year of rules demanding switch limiters be installed if buildings are having solar panels attached. Now, the Minister had his chance to respond to all of that, yet all bar one of those concerned, the Minister has not given meaningful answers or solutions to those problems. Now, the one issue he could say he had taken steps to start addressing concerns was the backup power for Kalgoorlie. Now, the Minister can say that Synergy will, now the Minister can say that Synergy will turn on the backup power at all times when Kalgoorlie is affected by power outages. But of course, up until this matter was raised by myself and community members, that was not the case. But and as I say, the Minister cannot take any kudos for raising that issue and resolving that issue himself. It was only because of political pressure that came on to him. And the reality is that in this place, this issue had been raised, and the Minister continued to say that couldn't be done, that it had to take longer than that, and yet we know that in fact that isn't the case, and we know that in fact now that matter is dealt with in a timely manner. And I held a public forum in relation to that matter, and that matter was in fact reinforced by engineers at that meeting, and as I say, shortly afterwards, it was when the Minister came back and the procedures in Western Power were changed. Now, the Minister went through some other issues in relation to the failing to make notable progress to reverse the declining reliability of our electricity supply, especially in rural and metropolitan semi-rural areas. We have not seen any improvement in that, and I've been through this in some detail. I'm not going to go through those statistics again in this place, but what we see when we go through Western Power's own statistics in relation to this is a material decline in the life of all critical or nearly all critical electrical components in the electricity system, as completely opposed to the record under the previous Liberal National Coalition government, and that is, if you look at the data for the period that it was under our tenure, in fact we were improving and reducing the life of those critical components which are necessary to ensure reliable power on our network. It is no wonder, as I pointed out, no wonder that we see the poor reliability in our power system that is getting worse and worse, I will say. And the evidence for that, as I said in those statistics, is unequivocal. Now, if we go through and just look at the outages we've had last year, we did ask some questions in the other place. 1.5 million power outages. 1.5 million power outages under this Minister in the last year. And the Minister seems unperturbed by that. We have the Minister coming to this place saying everything's fine, everything's right. Yes, we can expect some outages, but we've got, 99 point whatever % of reliability in the network. But of course, what we see is a materially worsening experience for households, particularly in those regional areas. Now, as I said before, I've taken members through reports in relation to that. And it does show that declining age of those critical assets, switchgear, insulators, transformers and the like. And that is stark data, and it's crystal clear. It's crystal clear that this government have not invested the money and have not made the commitment that they need to improve the system. Now, we hear the Minister come into this place and talk about saying, well, suddenly, because they suddenly realised there was a problem last Christmas, now all of a sudden they've gone through and done some improvements to the system. But as I will go through in a little bit of detail, where is the evidence for that? And of course, the real test for that is going to be this summer, because when I talk to people who are in the industry, figures and senior people who are involved in the energy industry say that what they expect to see, in fact, this summer is a worse outcome than last summer. Now, we don't have a crystal ball. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. But given that this summer is likely to be a hot summer, we will soon see the truth of the Minister's particular words. Now, we had in the independent review of the Christmas outages, the Shepherd report, the Minister has made a number of claims, or at least has claimed to respond to that. But, we want to go through that report, and that, the damning lines on page 14 of the report, where they went through the data. The data shows over a 4-year period a materially worsening customer outage experience trend in CBD and rural areas with flat performance in urban areas. And that is in large part under the tenure of this Minister. And as I say, the Minister comes into this place and, apart from gratuitous insults towards myself, says that everything's fine, yes, we should expect a bit, but, don't worry about it. But the failures are in critical areas. And at the end of the day, again, we've had the Minister come into this place and say, well, it's not me, I don't run it. It's a bit of a parallel of the criticism the Labor Party made of the former Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, I don't hold a hose. But we have the Minister coming into this place and saying, well, they run it, I'm not really responsible. The buck stops with the Minister. The Minister has the responsibility to guarantee, as best as possible, the Minister has the responsibility to guarantee that we have a reliable power network. Now, the Minister loves to go on and talk about climate change. He loves to talk about various prognostications about preparing for renewables and batteries and the challenges of balancing power and the like. But that's the job the Minister has. That's his job. And that's the job that governments have had now for some period of time as we've transitioned into renewables, because as the member for Swan Hills would know, this transition has been on for some period of time. It isn't something that has just occurred. But as I say, this is the Minister's sort of routine response and words. Now, the nub of the matter is that this has got worse under your government. Now, it may be very interesting to go through all of those factors and talk about those and discuss them, but that is the job of the Minister. The Minister's job is to ensure, as far as is humanly possible, that we can have a reliable power network. And it's fine giving lectures about electrons and where power goes and where power doesn't go and the like, but that doesn't hide the fact in terms of the Minister's job. Now, there's obviously an important transition going on, and there's room for investment in new technology and accommodating the renewables that are coming into the network, but that shouldn't be at the expense of reliability in the system that we have already. Now, in the last debate, I raised the issue of the recommendations from the independent review into the Christmas outages, and there were two issues, and one of those I spoke about, or at least asked a question about today, but in relation to improving reliability and reducing frequency and duration of outages, and particularly in the rural areas or semi-peri-urban areas. But those issues were failing to respond in a tangible manner to the Christmas outage review recommendation for improving grid reliability in rural areas and failing to resolve problems around timely repair of electricity outages due to bushfire rules enacted by DFES. And it was fascinating. Minister, I did go and have a look at the website of Ecological, and I'm certain that the people in Ecological are fine environmental scientists and fine policy people, but if in fact you read their blurb on bushfires, and I'm not seeking to criticise them here, Minister, but if you read them, their expertise is in the policy area around that, and then in recovery of areas after bushfires. But I won't dwell on that point, Minister. I don't wish to in any sense to cry Ecological. They look like a fine organisation. However, there are many people who are experts in bushfires and how to prevent bushfires and how to manage bushfires, and I would have thought that they would have been the more appropriate people and you say it was only the department. And again, you wave your hand here, or don't wave your hand, Minister, but you come into this place and say, well, it would be corrupt for me to do it, and so on. But you're the Minister, you're there to make sure that the appropriate people are there. You can get information from the department, you can give direction to the department if you don't think that's proper. I mean, this idea that somehow the Minister's just some mute hand only there to turn up to openings of things but has no capacity for direction is wrong. And in fact, you have given direction. You've come into this place before and said you've given direction, so you do have input into that. Now, in the first point it was addressed by a simple recommendation, and that is failing to respond in a tangible manner and so on, and that was that Western Power assess the grid in areas with regular problems, compile plans for how they intend to fix the problems, and when that will happen. Now, we've been told by the Minister's come into this place and said, well, yes, there have been repairs done, but we've seen no information. There's been no information given to the community or the public. Where has this been done? Has it been done for Quairading, for example? Has it been done for Rolleystone, which seems to suffer continued power outages? A number of the coastal locations going up towards Geraldton have dreadful power reliability. Walkaway, we see the terrible power problems and power reliability in Walkaway. Have those problems been addressed? We have no way of knowing. We have no way of knowing because, again, this gold standard transparency that we're supposed to see from this government is not evident. We haven't seen the plans. We've got no way of tracking whether the government or whether Western Power, as an agent of the government, is carrying out those plans. What improvements have taken place? What are the tangible improvements that have taken place? Nothing. No transparency to that at all. Just the Minister coming into this place and making an assertion saying, don't worry, everything's okay, everything's going to be better this summer. As I say, the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating, and that is, do we have those plans? And as I say, this is at best a muted response from the Minister. So the Minister says, I've done that, but there's no proof, there's nothing measurable, there's nothing that the Minister, through Western Power, can be held accountable for in relation to that. Now, there have been other comments about, climate modelling and so on, but, we don't need to see grand statements of intent. We actually just need to see the detail of the plan and the delivery of that. Now, the second critical point on the Christmas outage report concerned the unduly long time it takes to restore power. Now, that has, the Minister's right, that's obviously not the only problem that we see. But given that this was almost a year ago that we saw these issues, and, the Minister might say, well, that's just a minor thing, but the Shepherd inquiry saw fit to raise this as a significant issue that needed resolution and needed to be fixed. Now, clearly, no one wants Western Power willy-nilly to go out and needlessly start fires, but what we've heard on a number of occasions in areas is where adequate fighting resources were available, where a fire risk is absolutely minimal. Western Power crews have not been able to go out because of that protocol. So again, we hear the Minister talk about it's being changed, it's being planned. Well, where's the detail? I mean, having meetings with some shires is not being explicit and transparent with the community, and we have no certainty whatsoever that we're going to see any tangible change. And why does that have an impact? It has an impact because on high fire risk days, those crews are not able to go out and do their work because of that protocol. And what we hear is that the protocol that had been adopted by Western Power in relation to this was overwhelmingly the most stringent protocol in Australia, and that there was no necessity to take the extreme measures they did, that repairs could safely be carried out using a different approach. And that is and that's what we're looking for from the Minister. But once again, no transparency, we get no detail. What is clear is that those procedures are not finalised, they're not locked in. Here we are coming into another hot Christmas period, and we see nothing about it. Now, in terms of as I say, in terms of the implementation of that plan, the community does have a right to know. They have a right to know what has occurred. They have a right to know what has been done. Now, if we go through the Western Power summary in response to that report, again, Minister, I do read, and what I read are a whole heap of intentions in that report. Very little of anything in any tangible physical response to say, yes, we've done this, we've fixed it, yes, here's the plan. I mean, we get words like, what have they done? Words like, over the longer term, Western Power will incorporate improvements in the fire response procedures. Well, what's that? It's like yes, Minister on steroids. That's not a response. That's not a tangible response, a meaningful response. It's just a form of administrative speak. And that does not mean anything. Now, as I say, so they're still working on it, but we need to guarantee, and the Minister needs to guarantee, which is what I asked today, the Minister needs to guarantee that we're going to see a tangible difference. I don't want the Minister to guarantee there won't be bushfires. I want the Minister to guarantee that there is going to be some tangible difference. And as I've said, we come to transparency. We see no transparency in relation to this government, and we see no transparency in relation to this Minister. He's happy to hand out gratuitous insults towards myself and towards anyone else, can I say, who dares to ask him a question on this side, but we don't see just the straight, honest, open detail coming to this place. So if we go to a couple of other points on that list of reports, the list of issues, failing to publicly release Labor's plan for the future of our energy system without the insurance of coal-powered generators being available, and failing to ensure Premier Coal had met its contractual commitments to coal supply for our coal-fired power plants. Now again, if we look in relation to those matters, we hear the Minister say nothing, nothing to see here, nothing he can do, he doesn't direct the contracts and so on. But of course the Minister absolutely has responsibility. The Minister absolutely can give written direction, and that's what we ultimately saw. The Minister's saying he can do nothing, and then we hear the Minister come into this place and say that he's actually had discussions, and Premier Coal have embarked upon a plan to import coal from the eastern states, literally bringing coal from Newcastle, it would appear, to come here. And of course the Minister could have done that all along. The government does have contractual force. Now, again, the Minister comes here and says, well, do you want me to bankrupt the company? Clearly no one does. But the contract gives the Minister the power to have those discussions with the company, and to direct Western Power to have those discussions with that company and make sure that there's satisfactory resolution. And then the Minister has the opportunity to review those plans, say whether the Minister feels that they are appropriate. And we just go through this litany of excuses around why there wasn't the coal supply there. And as I say, now we have this ludicrous situation of it sounds like $40 million, $40 million at least is going to be spent on coal. The Minister, for some reason, says he can't say how much money is going to come in, and we don't hear anything about where is that going to be paid from. Again, no transparency. The gold transparency is completely inadequate. You know, now we have the situation that's become apparent yesterday, Santos Varanus Island operation. They've dropped 150 terajoules of gas coming into the system for 4 to 6 weeks. Who knows, it could be longer. That's almost 20% of the gas supply capacity of that network. Again, we're told, don't worry, there's nothing to see here. But of course, what this absolutely highlights is the vulnerability the Minister is putting us in, because now the Minister has said, and I'm sort of, you hear whispers the Minister maybe isn't the biggest fan of this Cabinet decision, but the closure of the Collie Power Stations, the government Collie Power Stations, the cessation of the Blue Water contract in 2030. So we're going to have this state effectively completely dependent for its major firming capacity on gas, utterly dependent on one source. So we've gone from a situation where we have reliability of our power network from 2 sources, so that if one isn't there, the other one is there to back up. Now we're losing 40% of our electricity generation capacity, that's firming capacity in the network, and that is disappearing under this Minister's watch. That he is going to plunge us into a situation where we're utterly dependent on that gas for that firming capacity. And when he talks about batteries and other things, they are immaterial when it comes to long-term firming capacity in the network. I want to give other members a chance to speak on this matter, but what is very, very clear is that this Minister is not transparent, but also this Minister has overseen a material worsening of the reliability of our electricity network, and there is nothing the Minister has said that gives me any confidence that we will see improved performance this summer.